Welcome to the Cedar Falls regular City Council meeting this August 5th, 2019. I now call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call from Madam Clerk, please.
Miller,
Here.
DeBoer,
Here.
Cruz,
Here.
Blanford,
Here.
Dara,
Here.
Wieland,
Here.
Green.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next item, is there a motion to approve the regular meeting of July 15th?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I'd like to now actually invite Kevin Dill, the past director of the Blackhawk County Veterans Affairs, to come and tell the public and council and staff of an event coming up tomorrow evening, if you would please. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Tomorrow night, we hold our typical Wednesday night picnics on Wednesday night at the Cedar Falls Veterans Memorial Park, which is well attended. And then tomorrow night, the director of the VA Vision 23, which is the director of the VA hospital in Iowa City, plus other VA medical clinics in the area, is coming here to Cedar Falls to address the new Mission Act that Trump signed into law recently on health care for veterans. So I invited her and her staff to come here to Cedar Falls at the new public safety building to address veterans from Cedar Falls, really veterans from the entire Cedar Valley. But I'm kind of excited about that because typically we have to go to the VA to get the information, and they're coming here to Cedar Falls to do that. So that's a big deal for the city.
Tomorrow evening, new public safety building
At 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
It'll be probably about an hour-long meeting. So yeah, we still have time to go to the night out. Is that right? Am I saying that right? National Night Out. And then if you're a veteran, to still come over to the new public safety building to listen to the director of the Veterans Affairs talk about the new Mission Act Trump signed into law.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
No questions? Thanks.
Next, I do have a proclamation for Gastroparesis Awareness Month. It reads in part, whereas gastroparesis is a chronic debilitating stomach illness, meaning paralysis of the stomach. This illness affects around 5 million people in the United States, yet very little is known in the medical field or general public. And whereas symptoms of gastroparesis include debilitating pain, nausea, vomiting, quick to fullness, abdominal bloating, unpredictable blood sugar levels, and can lead to serious complications such as malnutrition, dehydration, extreme weight loss, overwhelming fatigue, and severe decrease in our quality of life and even death. And whereas there is little awareness about gastroparesis, there's very little effective treatment options, with the majority leading to even more serious problems like sepsis and much more. There are very few options for medications, and there is currently no cure. And whereas we are seeking more research, improved medications, additional treatment options, better patient support, and more hope for the future, and whereas we seek to better educate the medical community and the general public regarding the devastating effects of this illness and the severe loss of quality of life, we hope this education will help members of the Cedar Falls community to recognize the challenges associated with gastroparesis and support those affected. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Jim Brown, Mayor of Cedar Falls, proclaim August 2019 as Gastroparesis Awareness Month in the city of Cedar Falls, signed this 5th day of August 2019. I believe Nikki Morrissey is here also to say a few words. You're welcome to come to the microphone.
Thank you. My name, again, is Nikki Morrissey. In 2013, I started my journey with gastroparesis. It wasn't until 11 months later that I was officially diagnosed. After getting the diagnosis, little was known about it locally, and no one knew what to do or how to proceed. We left the doctor's office with more questions than we had answers. We left scared and unsure what to do next. We had many local doctors here, and we were told by a lot of them that it was all in my head. I was making it up, that I couldn't be feeling what I was feeling. They refused to treat me, several of them, and others just didn't know what to do. As my health continued to decline, my family and I had to make some tough choices. At that point, we decided to refer myself to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I was unable to eat at this time, and when I did, I would vomit several times a day, upwards 20, 30s, even higher than that. I became more weak, the nausea was unbearable, the fatigue was debilitating. Since we were quickly running out of options, we went to Mayo. They confirmed what we had already known, that I did have gastroparesis, and in fact, it was a severe form of gastroparesis. Mayo set me up on a feeding tube trial, and after 3 days, it was deemed a failure. I was unable to tolerate 5 milliliters of formula, and they even bypassed my stomach going into my intestines, and that could not hold anything as well. The tube was removed, and I was sent home. Again, no answers. I was down to 82 pounds. This put me at 86 total pounds lost since I started my journey in 2013. My husband and I began quickly planning for the worst. A funeral was in process, lots of thoughts and ideas and ways that I wanted my final days to be, had to be discussed and talked about. In 2015, I was extremely lucky to run into a local doctor who is also a resident of Cedar Falls, Dr. Matt Ketman. He took a personal interest in me, and at that time I was over doctors. I didn't want to see him. I was tired of getting thrown out of offices, crying, and being told that I needed a psychologist, not a doctor. He did research. He continued to contact my husband, with me still refusing to see him. He researched. He found new ways to try to help me. He did everything in his power to try to keep me as healthy as possible. He put me on TPN, which is a form of intravenous feeding. This would pass my digestive system. It was directly in my bloodstream. This also was a failure. The feedings were pulled out of my bloodstream and into my tissues, causing severe refeeding syndrome, something that could also eventually end in death. My body was not able to fight off the infections, and I ended up septic several times from the various PICC lines, midlines, a Hickman port, so TPN at that point was stopped. We tried placing a power port just to allow me to get the hydration and the potassium that I needed just to survive daily. Again, I went septic, and that line was removed. It was then that Dr. Ketman told us what we had already known, because Mayo had told us the same. We were out of options. Today, he continues to do research, and so do we, on ways to help maintain the best possible quality of life I can have. Without his help and dedication, I do not believe I would be here today. Through this journey, I have had to have a hysterectomy for severe anemia. I have had a heart attack and other cardiac episodes, which led to the placement of a cardiac pacemaker in 2017 at the age of 39. I have had seizures, multiple bouts of sepsis, DVD blood clots. I have been told over and over that there are no treatment options available. My body continues to suffer from all the things that it needs to stay healthy. My bones, my muscles are weak and deteriorating. I now have severe arthritis in the majority of my body, and daily tasks are becoming more and more difficult. Simply put, we, the gastroparesis community, we need more. More doctors that are educated to help treat this condition, more research for help to someday find a cure. There are so many other things that I can list which people suffer from, and the only way to get more and to continue to raise awareness for this devastating condition is to start locally, to start small. This year, the gastroparesis community that I'm involved in has stepped up our efforts, and we're moving the needle a little more each day. We have been trying for more research for medications, for education, and for better and safer treatment options. We have a bill that is currently going to be introduced this year, although we're not expecting it to go far, but it will be introduced into Congress. It's H.R. 3396. We have started a Real GP campaign, which outlines the myths of gastroparesis and that each story is different. We have started a website, tocuregp.org, as well. We also did a march on Washington this past June to get in front of as many congressmen and as many people that we could to raise awareness, inviting doctors that are specialists in this field from across the country to come and to speak as well on our behalf. I have myself had the honor to talk with Senator Grassley's office and share my story with him, and Senator Erst's office as well, in hopes that they will listen and support this bill. The more and more we talk, the more and more gastroparesis will maybe become a name, and the more and more people will listen and maybe will be urged to do more. Spreading awareness to the Cedar Falls community is extremely important to me. and I am so grateful to be here to accept this proclamation, not only for myself, for my family that suffers right along with me each and every day, but also for the 5 million of us others in the world that are suffering from this debilitating disease. I also accept this for the 34 close friends that I have lost just this year to this illness alone. Mayor Brown, I feel extremely blessed to be a part of a community that is led by you. Thank you for taking a personal interest in my story, in the story of my family, and for wanting to learn more and to educate our community as well. We are extremely lucky to have you as our leader. Thank you for recognizing Gastroparesis Awareness this month for August and for your continued support. Thank you, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
And thanks to the Nikki Strong team that's here. Appreciate that. Council, a little bit backwards here. The administration of oath to public safety officers and reserve officers will take place the August 19th meeting, if you want to make note of that. But I will still ask for any further agenda revisions from Madam Clerk.
I have no other revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to special order of business, item 2 is a public hearing on the proposed plans for the 2019 sidewalk assessment project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications filed with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before we move on to the public comment, I would like, I believe, Matt to give a description of tonight's public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The 2019 sidewalk assessment involves the replacement of deficient sidewalk panels that will be assessed to the adjacent property owners as outlined in the City of Cedar Falls Code of Ordinances, Iowa Code, and federal ADA standards. This zone is Zone 2 of 10. This is located between 4th, 12th, Hudson, and Grove. The total estimate for the cost of construction is $107,000, $51.73.
Thank you, Matt. We'll open it up for anyone here for public comment on this public hearing. Hearing and seeing none, I'll declare the hearing closed. Item 3 is a resolution approving and adopting the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the 2019 sidewalk assessment project. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4 is a public hearing on the proposed vacation of a pedestrian trail access easement along the southern border of the Western Home campus between South Main Street and Prairie Parkway. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications filed with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Again, before public comment, I believe David Sturch is here to discuss this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This request is to vacate a 15-foot wide trail and pedestrian easement that's located along the south end of the Western Home campus on South Main Street. That easement was put in place years ago in anticipation of the Highway 58 and Viking Road project and where that trail is going to go. Well, since then, that trail was rerouted to in front of Blaine's and Walmart and crosses Viking there. So the idea was to reroute that trail to the front instead of the backside of Walmart and Blaine's there. So I think it's a better location where it's at now. So the request is to vacate that easement along that south side of the Western Home campus.
Thank you, David. Now open up for any public comments, this portion. Hearing seen none, declare the hearing closed. Item 5 is a resolution approving and authorizing the pedestrian trail access easement located along the southern border of the Western Home campus. Is there a motion, please?
Motion approved.
Motion and second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 6 is a public hearing on a proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption to ACOA for construction of an industrial use manufacturing and office facility on Development Drive. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication? Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Again, before public comment, I believe Shane Graham will have some comments on this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. If council might remember, back in 2018, City Council approved a development agreement with ACOH LLC to build a new 30,000 square foot manufacturing facility. This is on Development Drive in the West Viking Road Industrial Park. Two parts to that agreement. One was the donation of land for the project, and the other one is once the building is started and nearing completion, it's formally adopting an ordinance to approve a 5-year partial property tax abatement. This is a state program for a 5-year partial property tax abatement. Again, it's filed with the county, so what council is doing is just approving that application from the business to the county for that tax abatement. Again, part of the development agreement that was approved back in 2018.
Thank you, Shane. We'll open up for public comment. Hearing and seeing none, declare the hearing closed. Item 7 is pass an ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of the industrial use manufacturing and office facility. Upon its first consideration, is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. For the comments from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 8 is a public hearing on a proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption to Buckeye Corrugated for construction of an industrial use warehouse and production facility on Capitol Way. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Shane, I think you're up again for this one.
Thank you, Mayor. This one is for, for Buckeye Corrugated Inc. They're nearing completion of their 175,000 square foot industrial use warehouse out on Capitol Way, out in the industrial park. Council approved this development agreement back in 2017. Again, they're nearing completion of the building. They've gotten the donation of the land, so again, this is the formal adoption of the tax abatement ordinance, allowing them to file that application with the county assessor's office.
Thank you, Shane. Once again, I'll open up for public comment. Hearing and seeing none, declare the hearing closed. Item 9 is pass the ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption to Buckeye for construction of an industrial use warehouse and production facility. Upon its first consideration, is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Comments from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 10 is a public hearing on a proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption to FN Investors for construction of an industrial use lab and office facilities on Venture Way. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications filed with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Shane, I think you're up again.
Yep, just like the previous two, this is, again, City Council approved an agreement back in 2018 for a new 20,000 square foot industrial lab building. That's nearing completion as well. So again, we're just asking council to approve the tax abatement ordinance to allow them to file that with the county assessor's office.
Thank you, Shane. Public comments on that? Declare the hearing closed. Item 11 is pass the ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of the industrial use lab and office facility. Upon its first consideration, is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion second. Comments from council? Roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to old business, item 12 is passed ordinance 2949, amending certain sections of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing regulations for events on public property. Upon its third and final consideration, is there a motion, please?
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is a consent calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or the public requests an item to be pulled for such discussion. Any such requests from council? From the public? I'll now summarize the consent calendar. Item 13 is receive and file the resignation of Evan Renfro as a member of the Library Board of Trustees. I want to thank Evans. I'm messing that up. Thank you, Evan, for serving the community. Really appreciate it. Item 14 is receive and file the Committee of the Whole minutes of July 15th. Item 15 is receive and file the report of the July 22nd joint meeting of the City Council and the Utilities Board of Trustees. Item 16 is receive and file departmental monthly reports of June 2019. Item 17 is approve the request of Community Main Street for temporary signs for the downtown shuttle. 18 is approve special event request. 19 is approving applications and permits. 20 is approving applications for permits and licenses. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is the resolution calendar. These items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the public or the council requests as such. Any such requests from council?
38 and 39.
38 and 39.
32, please.
Item 22.
32.
32. 20 through to 27.
Item 31, Mr. Mayor?
Item 31. Anything further from council? From the public?
22 through 27.
I'll now summarize the resolution calendar minus those items that were pulled. Item 21 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an easement agreement in conjunction with the Sidewalk Cafe on Main Street. Item 28 is approving a claim for non-residential relocation assistance reimbursement in conjunction with the West First Street reconstruction project. 29 is approving and accepting the contract and bond for the South Main Street parking lot project. 30 is approving and authorizing execution of a contract for completion of improvements with Western Home and approving an escrow agreement relative to the final plat of Western Home Communities. 33 is a resolution receiving and filing the bids and approving and accepting the low bid in the amount of $186,000 for the 2019 bridge maintenance project. 34 is approving the application for Traffic Safety Improvement Program funding with the Iowa DOT relative to the Cedar Heights Drive and Green Hill Road intersection improvements. 35 is approving and adopting revised rules of procedure for the Board of Adjustment. 36 is approving the final plat of Park Ridge Estate subdivision. 37 is approving the final plat of Western Home Communities. 40 is approving and accepting the low bid and approving and authorizing execution of a rehabilitation contract relative to a home housing rehabilitation project. 40 is approving and authorizing execution of an assignment and assumption agreement relative to a private development agreement for development on property located on West 23rd Street. 42 is approving and revised Highway 20 Commercial Corridor Overlay Zoning District site plan for construction of a restaurant and convenience store to be located on Lot 2 of Gateway Business Park. 43 is a resolution approving site plan for construction of a retail professional office building on Viking Road. 44 is approving and authorizing the expenditure of funds to order pavers to complete the brick pattern for Peter Melendi Park and East 2nd Street sidewalk. 45 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting August 19th as a date of public hearing on the proposed plans for the 2019 Peter Melendi Park renovation project. 46 is setting August 19th as a date of public hearing to consider entering into a proposed agreement for private development and to consider conveyance of certain city-owned real estate. Is there a motion to approve the resolution calendar minus the items pulled?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving up through items 22 through 27 are resolutions approving and authorizing execution of an agreement relative to the fiscal year 20 community betterment grants. The organizations receiving these grants are as follows: the Bo's Beautiful Blessings, Cedar Falls Community Theater, Cedar Falls Historic Society, Hewsome Strong Foundation, Volunteer Center of the Cedar Valley, and the Waterloo Cedar Falls Symphony Orchestra Association. Is there a motion to approve those items?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Open up for discussion. Microphone.
The reason I brought that up is I've had questions about what does it take to get a community betterment grant? So just a couple words on that would be appreciated.
Staff, do you have an update as far as those grant process?
Sure. These grants are funded through the hotel motel funds, and every year we take applications and proposals for projects that are related to quality of life enhancements. And then we have a staff committee score those and make a recommendation on them.
Thank you, Stephanie. Further comments from council? From the public? Been motion second. Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 31 is approving and authorizing execution of a contract for completion of improvements relative to the final plat of Park Ridge Estates. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Open up for discussion. Council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just curious if we could get a quick update on the stormwater management drainage for that property. I'm just curious to see if that had been addressed as part of the completion of improvements.
Absolutely. Staff, do you have an update on that?
I can
Chase.
do that, Mr.
Sure.
Mayor. Yeah, during the development, city engineering staff worked with the consultant, the developer's consultant, on a drainage and analysis in the area. That was reviewed. There's some storm sewer upsizing that was performed with this development. The city's worked with the developer in cost sharing that to upsize the storm sewer to relieve some of the storm sewer issues in the area. The current development is abiding by all the city ordinances as it pertains to the post-construction stormwater ordinance. So.
Thank you, Chase. Anything further from council? From the public? It's been motioned. Second requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 32 reads, approving and authorizing execution of a supplemental agreement for the 2019 engineering services relative to the Northern Cedar Falls drainage study. Is there a motion, please?
So move.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council or questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Just hoping for some background on the scope of this from staff.
You bet. Staff, is it you again, Chase?
Sure. So this project was compromised of some of the spring flooding we had in 2019. We had some significant ice jams along the river. We had some flooding, some significant flooding in northern Cedar Falls off of the north part of Cypress Avenue and Rockland Street. This agreement is to have our consultant look at some of the historic drainage patterns in the area and propose any possible improvements to mitigate some of this localized flooding.
Very good. Thank you, Chase.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? From the public? In motion second requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 38 is a resolution approving the final plat of Green Hill Village Townhomes 2 Phase 1. Is there a motion, please?
Second.
Been motion second. Open it up for questions or comments from council. Ms. DeBoer?
I had voted no on the original site plan for this, as I didn't see that there was elevation listed on the original site plan for the entire project, and showing that we had preservation of the character of the neighborhood, and I don't see that we have that on the final plat as well.
Staff help with that?
Well, if you would, we could go through the final plat and just talk through a couple steps and what our review involves, and then we could move on to the site plan and talk about that in with respect to the comment related on the MU district and concerns about the site plan.
Certainly happy to do that. Yet you have something ready?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Iris. And we will open it for public comment if so needed. Go ahead, Iris.
Thank you. So I prepared a PowerPoint, a short PowerPoint, kind of touching on an overview of the project, both the final plat as well as the site plan. I'm happy to run through both consecutively, or if you'd like me to stop at the final plat and then we can talk about it and then go to the site plan. So whatever the council would prefer. In that.
Is there a preference there for council?
Well, it has to approve the final plat to be able to go to number 39, so we should probably do 38 first.
I think that's a good way of going. 38 first. Thank you, Iris.
I'll just run through both then really quick. So again, this is a very quick overview of what's being proposed both for the final plat and site plan. So for those watching or in the crowd, in the council packet there is that.
Iris, I'm sorry. Just right up there. It's different. I know.
Okay, getting used to it. So just noting that just going to do a quick overview of both proposals, and more details can be found in the staff report within the council packet for those that are interested. So Panther Farms LLC is proposing to final plat about 3.5 acres of land southeast of the Green Hill Road and Hudson Road intersection, just south of the Green Hill Market site. It's the area here outlined in red on this map. In essence, the final platting process is the final step in creating buildable lots. When reviewing a proposed final plat, the main criterias of review are that the final plat is consistent with the master plan of that area and its corresponding preliminary plat. The most recent master plan for this area was approved in April 2018, and the Green Hill Village Townhomes 2 preliminary plat approved in March 2019 are both shown on this slide. The preliminary plat that was approved in summary created one buildable lot and one detention basin. The rest of the site, highlighted in yellow, was platted as outlots and tracts reserved for future development. I would like to note that these reserved outlots and tracts cannot be developed at this time. When land is reserved in this nature for any development to occur on these areas, another preliminary and final plat will be needed and submitted for review by both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. Outlots are not developable lots, and any changes to what are shown on the preliminary plat would require both review by P&Z and City Council. I'd also want to note that the proposed detention basin on this plat was not shown on the master plan document. The reason for this is that when a development moves further through the process, it was found that through stormwater calculations it was needed. So this type of change is common for between master plan and more thorough development plans. So with that, the overall potential development decreased by one of those town hall buildings. So the final plat itself that is being considered tonight only encompasses the top half of the preliminary plat, the area highlighted in yellow in this image on the slide. The final plat would legally create one buildable lot, the stormwater detention basin, and an outlot for future development that will function as a stormwater and access easement until a replat of this lot is submitted. So water would flow from the development site to that detention basin in this manner. The final plat is consistent with the master plan for this area, the MU zoning district, and the approved preliminary plat, as well as the city subdivision code. It is for this reason that staff, or these reasons that staff recommends approval of the proposed plat. So approval of this final plat would allow for the site plan of this, the lot 1, to be considered, and that would be for 2 townhome buildings with 9 units total, which are also on the agenda. So I'll just go into that quick transition to that item. So the proposed site.
Mr. Mayor,
plan-
excuse me. I think we'll be done there and we'll consider 38. I might not have been clear earlier, Iris. Thanks. Based off of that, I will open it up for council. Mr. Burr?
Well, there's quite a bit of elevation difference between that you just showed on the map there and the homes that are currently to the south of that. What is their plan for the elevation difference? You're saying that's in the outlots, and so therefore it doesn't have to be considered at this time?
So they've accounted for that. There's a street in between there, and then there's the lots to the south. And so when that southern piece comes in, they will have to show grading for that, and they'll have to show how those townhomes are going to transition to the homes to the south.
And what is the reason that you would do this in such a small portion, with just this, instead of the whole thing in its entirety?
So they did that with the concept plan showing how they would lay out the townhomes in concept. What the plat does is it authorizes only what the developer wants to build at this time. So usually plats are often done in phases, so they can only put in the infrastructure that they want to limit their cost for different phases of the development. So for future development, there's nothing authorized on the south. So if, for example, there needs to be further review about that change in elevation, that can occur then. During that, there'll be a number of different processes, not only a review of the another preliminary plat, which we'd look at the grading for that and how the site changes. We'd look at then the final plat and a site plan for the whole area. Now, they can't just build anything they want there. It has to comply with the concept plan. So the reason that they don't have a site plan for the whole area is that the plat doesn't authorize them to develop property other than on the buildable lot authorized by the plat itself.
But it also does nothing to show a preservation or continuation of the character of the neighborhood of what's existing there now.
So if there's a concern about the concept plan, the master plan that was adopted before, and that it wasn't specific enough to address some of those character issues that both the neighborhood and the council might be concerned about, the council could direct the master plan itself, concept plan, back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for further review in the future. So they could refer that back, so it'd get another look at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Even if this final plat and the first building were approved, you could send it back for the next phase of development to take a look at and review those, the concept for that. So you could get another look at that concept plan, and maybe some additional conditions could be applied to that area to the south as it transitions to the single-family area.
And by developing this in separate plats, does that change a parking requirement for each of these buildings?
No, it wouldn't change the parking requirements.
Anything further from council? On item 38,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cruz.
Ms. Howard, you just said the parking wouldn't be affected, but if we're developing this piecemeal, if I could say that, you have depicted 9 townhomes here. In the final plat, we're not approving 9 townhomes. We're just approving the grade and the retention pond. Is that what I'm understanding?
In the final plat approves and creates the lot itself for development. So it creates one lot for development, and then the site plan is what determines exactly what gets built on that particular lot.
That's item 39. We're talking item 38. In that information, there is a depiction of 9 townhomes shown there.
I think Ms. Lehman put it on here just for illustrative purposes. The plat itself, you have
Denny, can you go on screen there?
the plat itself is what's shown on the screen currently. I think it was used for illustrative purposes. So the site plan itself will then show what is actually going to be built.
So we're basically approving an alley, a street, and retention ponds, if I read that correctly?
So what's being proposed now is a buildable lot, which is outlined in red, and then I just kind of showed the proposed site plans that kind of leads into it there, but that's not part of this item. The green area is an outlot for future development that at this time will just serve as a detention kind of runoff for the water to move through. And then the last piece is that blue highlighted area, which will be the detention ponds. And ultimately, what you'll have is one buildable lot, one outlot for future development, and one detention basin.
Okay, then to follow up with Susan's remark or question on parking, you develop 9 townhomes. Because it's below 10, you don't need guest parking. The entire 7.7 acres is showing 34 units, which have 136 bedrooms. That would need 6 visitor spots. So by doing this piecemeal, you're avoiding the visitor spots?
No. So the townhomes act very much like single-family homes when it comes to required parking. So the code is 1 spot per bedroom. So each of these buildings has a 4 spots provided. 2, well, that's in the site plan portion, but it would be 2 in the garage, 2 in front of the garage. So already each site is providing their own additional spot, their visitor parking per se. So in this way, parking is addressed as it develops further on.
But 4 bedrooms, 4 spots, but at some point in this density that you have here, which to me is above medium density, this is high density, you need visitor spots.
3 bedrooms is what's proposed per unit.
As we get to the site plan, it shows 4.
It's a proposed 4th, but not all of them will update to that.
But you might have 5 people in them.
Ms. DeBoer.
On the map that you just had up that had the buildable area outlined in red, wouldn't it be true that that area could change if to the south of that was built something that was more in character with the neighborhood, that buildable area may shift depending on what was built in the area directly between it and what's existing now? I'm thinking that if you approved it now, you're agreeing to that red lot just as it is now, but that may change as the need would be changed depending on the area in the middle, the section just south of that but north of the current homes, is that was built into something that was more agreeable to the neighborhood, more preserving of the quality of the neighborhood there. could that buildable lot then be changed? So if we approve it now, we're doing it at that location, but that could change based on we would build south of it, if that makes sense.
So there's always processes that could occur to change a plat. So this is the application that we have before us today to final plat what was preliminary platted before. So the preliminary plat was approved, and then the final plat is consistent with that. So if in the future something changes to the south and there's need for changes to the north, there is a process by which it could be then replatted if that was the case. But the plat would authorize development of that particular lot.
It just would reduce their availability on that area south of here if they go ahead and build with this one.
Well, it's a pretty tight site, and there's a street connection in between that site and the lot that would be to the south. So the street would need to fit in there. So it would be pretty limited as far as what additional could occur.
Anything further from council? Mr.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that between now and when the next iteration of this comes, that changes in the overall plan could be made. What we're seeing here in this first proposal doesn't necessarily have to be continuous across there. You could change the overall goal of this somehow through changes in mixed use or something. Is that what you were saying?
So we know that there's been a lot of concerns expressed by the community, and the council may have some of those same concerns. And if the council has those same concerns or wants to articulate what you're concerned about, you could direct this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for them to review that master plan at the master plan level at this point. Maybe there's some additional conditions that can be imposed, or whatever it is that would make it more palatable, or would make it so that it would transition better to the single-family neighborhood to the south.
I asked that because I know there were a lot of initial concerns, which I shared, that the process through planning and zoning, which I think is pretty critical, was not able to be followed. I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong, but there were some issues that did not allow public input. What we typically do through planning and zoning, that public input did not occur. And I feel like perhaps the horse is already out of the barn with this particular proposal, but if there's anything that we can do between tonight and the next time they come with further development to ensure that neighborhood input has been given is kind of what I'm looking for. So are we pretty compelled to either vote on this tonight and then send it back to P&Z for further work?
Right, so it's the master plan level, I think, that you're talking about, and at that concept level, that something that transitioned to the neighborhood to the south, so the area that's now on this plat as reserved for future development. So this would be a good time to send that back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, if so desired, to take another look at that and see if the master plan needs to be tweaked to deal with that. What's on the council agenda tonight is a final plat of a preliminary plat that's already been approved.
Right.
And so there are state laws that
Right.
require you to approve something that's already been platted, preliminary platted, if it's consistent with the preliminary plat. So there's a little bit of a timing issue with this current.
And I understand that. I would just like to be able to assure the neighbors that the next round there's going to be more opportunity, and hopefully the developers would participate in that and be open to some ideas.
Anything further from council? Mr. Green?
Mr. Mayor, my concern would be with this, not with the current final plat. I'd sort of echo what Councilor Dara had said. It's the spot underneath it for Lot A. So I, again, don't have concerns with this plat itself as being being far enough away from the residences that it's not the kind of transitional building that we would need in Lot A, in my opinion, to the south.
Anything further from council on item 38?
So referring it back to the P&Z would require then the developer to work again with the neighborhood to try to come up with something that, as a master plan regarding the whole area, is what you're saying?
So the master plan, if you're referring to the master plan that just affects this particular development, the townhome development.
The entire lot.
So what's, if you're talking about,
Same thing as Frank and Rob.
okay, the lot to the south, for future development, yes.
Yeah, the 7.7 acres.
Right, and we would strongly suggest to the developer that they work with the neighborhood on that. We usually try to have them meet and have a good neighbor meetings to discuss.
I'd like to make that motion then to return this to P&Z.
You'd like to amend item 38 to go back to P&Z?
Yes.
To clarify, I think there was a little bit of miscommunication. So this plat and this site plan have to be considered with the pre-existing master plan since they were submitted with those.
So you need this to be either approved or denied?
Yes. So the future developable lots, the outlots, are the ones that, if you go back the master plan, a change could affect. But at this time, this one is relying on the because it was submitted under the previous master plan.
Go ahead, Mr. Cruz.
So what you're saying then is if we deny this final plat, then by default, it would go back to planning and zoning for an evaluation of the entire 7.7 acres?
No.
We'd have to make a motion to do so?
We are suggesting that the path forward, the easiest path forward for the council would be to approve the final plat and approve the site plan for this first initial lot, because that has already been, the table has already been set for those lots by adoption of the preliminary plat previously adopted by council. What could be then referred back to the commission would be to take another look at the master plan for the remainder of development of this area. So the outlot for future development, because it has not been preliminary platted yet, it's part of the preliminary plat, but it's a reserve for future development. So there's nothing on there that's being approved tonight as a buildable lot.
So what happens if we deny the final plat?
I think state law would say, and Attorney Rogers could comment on this as well, is that the hurdle for a final plat is if it's consistent with the preliminary plat and the city's subdivision ordinance. You'd have to state the reasons that it didn't meet those standards in order to deny the final plat.
If it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood for multiple reasons, one being that directly to the west of it are single-family homes, and there's no transition. What we have here depicted are very large townhomes, and there's no transition.
I'd leave that up to the council to decide how you want to address. That's a decision that you will need to make, whether to deny a final plat that is consistent with the preliminary plat, but you certainly are free to come up with the reasons you believe it's not consistent with the preliminary plat.
Then through this whole process, we gather information from the public and hear public opinion and comments to evaluate, so nothing is really set in stone. Correct?
If I could jump in here, there's far less discretion with council on a final plat, providing it otherwise complies with state law and our code of ordinances, and staff is saying it does so comply, but that doesn't tie the council's hands on future development. And we're not even to the site plan yet for this. This is just the platting process just creates lots upon which you can develop real estate and public infrastructure. So again, there's not much discretion at this point on the final plat. We're not talking about the site plan yet.
But Kevin, doesn't it make a difference that the preliminary plat was the entire 7.7 acres, where this final plat is just one section of that.
Developments often proceed in that fashion, and so this is not unusual for a final plat to only outline, in this case, one developable lot, and then these outlots in the detention basin. That's not unusual.
We have a requirement that a owner must preliminary plat the entire holdings that they have. And so we want to see how the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit together, even though they'll come through gradually in final plat, as Iris and Karen were saying. We'll gradually see those lots happen with the final plat.
Anything further from council? I will open up item 38 based off the discussion for any public comment. You bet. Just your name and address, please.
Chris Nolan, 1510 Athens Court. That was a good one to follow. I'm going to go back a little bit. We're here tonight because on March of 2018, Planning and Zoning approved a request by Panther Builders to amend the master plan to Green Hill Village and increase density. That's the problem. We weren't invited, we weren't told, a mailing went out, and ever since we've been back to Planning and Zoning for a total of 3 times, the cat's out of the bag. That was brought to you under the pretense that we were notified and had an opportunity to voice our concerns. We were not. You folks approved that with that understanding. You're saying they're telling you that you can't change anything. Well, you voted on it under false pretenses, and unfortunately, it's hard to undo. A letter was sent out by staff on the 18th and was not received by residents. We've done that battle back and forth. We had 45 residents attest to not receiving the mailing. We've received mailings from other notices on the other side of Hudson Road, even further away. To complicate things further, 33% of the development was listed as R1 on the county website. The city staff said that's been wrong since 1998. I've been watching the site for many years, knowing that we should be notified of any zoning changes. As of this morning, it's still zoned R1. It has not been changed. We attended 3 P&Z meetings to voice our concerns with several residents present, but found out that it was too late for P&Z to help. We missed that first meeting. We were done for. We felt that any plans to change Green Hill Village master plan and density increase should include the residents. When you're told that it meets the city standards, it's because the master plan and the density were changed at that first meeting. These circumstances are unfortunate for both the developer and the resident. Neither party should be made to bear the full burden of the problem. The developer has been asked by city staff more than once to compromise and build one-level units where they overlook existing homes. They have offered no concessions. The 34 four-bedroom units, and the developer has attested that that would probably be a 4-bedroom unit at the front of the garage, constitutes 136 bedrooms. This has an appearance of a dormitory rather than single-family housing. Along with it will come the usual problems of parking and congestions. We're asking for your help to achieve a workable compromise that will protect our interest and be compatible with present housing. There are other better suited areas suited for the development where it would fit in and not change the character of an existing neighborhood. The developer has stated that a great deal has been invested. I would like to note that so do we, and there is a concern that values would drop with the addition of these units. We're asking for your help to protect the value of our properties. This proposal, this development is not in character with the neighborhood. These 2 units you're asking to vote on are right across the street from existing homes. In fact, one of them was just sold, and I'd bet you $100 the new owner doesn't have a clue what's proposed across the street. Right up the area, right next to the other 5-plex or 4-plexes, there's 2 of them, 8. 5 of the 8 townhomes on the corner of Hudson and Green Hill, the tax bill is sent to another address. which indicates that those are rented units. That's the market. Those never sold. Those turned into rental because they did not sell. But right next to that is property that might quite be available for this project in a more
1 minute remaining, please.
and a more suitable property, single family, would be desirable in this area. You threw me off. I didn't know what you're doing. Sorry about that. We're asking for your help, please.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Anyone further? Right, 38, right. Any further comments on item 38?
Hello, I'm Mary Ann Nolan, 1510 Athens Court in Cedar Falls. When I spoke to planning and zoning, I used an analogy of running a race. The folks from Green Hill Village and Panther Builders are in this race. Panther Builders started the race on March 18th, 2018. The residents of Green Hill Village started the same race January of 2019. Needless to say, Panther Builders have had quite the head start. The residents of Green Hill Village did not get a chance to voice their opinion on the projected 3-story, 3-bedroom with an extra room to be used as the owner prefers that were proposed for our neighborhood. I am not so sure why Panther Builders are so hell-bent on adding multifamily townhomes to an existing single-family neighborhood. I did Google hell-bent. It's not offensive, so if I offended anyone, check with Google. I am not sure why Panther Builders seems to have so much more clout than the regular citizens of Cedar Falls. We too have invested large amounts of money in our homes and our property. Please consider this information as you place your vote. These townhomes do not fit into the character of a single-family neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone further for commenting on item 38?
Rita Durchenwald. I live at 1525 Athens Court, and I'm actually reading a statement from my next-door neighbor, Tim Jarks, who lives at 1521 Athens Court. He had a previous commitment tonight. It is my understanding that the council will be considering the request for a partial final plat of approval, although as of this moment, the neighbors of Green Hill Village affected by this development have not received any kind of notice. I wish to express my disapproval of the entire development with 3-story building and 3 to 4 bedroom units, but I'm also asking that the partial development before the council this coming Monday, August 5th, not be approved. Here are important factors involved in this development that the Green Hill Village neighbor is opposing. First of all, the neighborhood was not notified of the request to amend the master plan when it was approved in February of this year. And yes, city staff said letters were sent out to notify the neighborhood. All letters were not received by anyone. So there was no one there to voice their opposition, and when the neighborhood found out about the change, immediately the entire neighborhood became involved in opposing the development. Over this year, in the P&Z meetings and council meetings since our neighborhood became engaged in the proposed development, we have been hearing a common theme that we are too late. The P&Z and council must approve the development as it meets all of the criteria. Therefore, it must be approved. Since becoming involved, the proposed development, our neighborhood has been requesting that the P&Z and council reject a 3-story, 3 to 4 bedroom buildings, and that the areas to the south and west of the development site be single family as originally planned before the amendment made to the master plan back in March last year. Single-family homes, which have been here for several years prior to this development, will be greatly affected in character, property values, quietness, and our family lifestyles, especially if these buildings become rental units with numerous younger people in them, which is a process already happening in the existing built units. The atmosphere created by numerous younger people in these units, which I am guessing will become rental units if history repeats itself and common sense is applied. 3 to 4 bedroom units for $225,000 plus or minus, a short mile from the campus of UNI, like buildings in the condo already built in the neighborhood, 45% currently rentals, is going to become our neighborhood's worst nightmare. There have been numerous arguments by the developer of cost and his planning, which all could possibly have been avoided if proper protocol would have been followed in the beginning process. This problem should not fall on the shoulders of our neighborhood, and in following on this point, city staff have the appearance in some of their presentations and comments that the train process, it feels like a train though, cannot be reversed or stopped, and actually making comments in an unfair manner in regard to that very point. It has been said that the early master plan showed mixed-use type of building in the area east of Ashworth on Lauren Drive, but instead was built with single family in lieu, which would really have been a good application in that area. Again, not our neighbor's fault, our neighborhood's fault. Numerous attempts by people in our neighborhood to discuss an amicable compromise by our neighborhood and the developer have been rebuked by the developer. In closing, as I don't want to carry on with numerous more points, and I could, it is my request that the council reject and not approve the partial site plan before you this coming Monday night, August 5th. The proposal is for a partial, with the buildings in the northwest corner be built as a start to see how it goes. A partial approval for 2 buildings will carry a precedent in future proposals, which, if you listen to the staff comments at the last P&Z meeting, a plan of the proposal has already been approved and will take considerable cost to the developer to change. Totally unnecessary comment. And it is my request also that we take on the proposal as a whole final plat development and not repeat this process 6 months or a year down the road, and the process repeats itself, and maybe in our hopes our neighborhood will go away, and we won't.
Thank you. Anyone further comment on item 38?
Tim Hansen, I'm at 1517 Athens Court. And to kind of say what they've said in the past, but we had the letter everybody's talked about back a year ago in March that was supposed to be sent out. I have the list that we got from the city of 39 of us in the neighborhood. I'm the president of our HOA, by the way, as well. None of us got this letter. To back our side up, we have signed affidavits from everybody. So we're taking this serious. All we hear from the city is that we have a letter, we have an address, and you should have gotten it, and that we can't help that you don't remember not getting it. We don't take kind, that's not very nice. So that's what I've got to say about it.
Thank you very much. Anyone further on item 38 this evening? Hearing and seeing none, circle back to the council. It has been motioned and second for item 38 in the final plat. Any further discussion from council or questions?
If I may, Mayor.
Yes.
In regards to rejecting a final plat, you had mentioned it's got to be outlined what the reasoning is. That I thought that applied to P&Z, but not the council in this case. But that, from what I'm hearing, that is to us as well.
Well, the council is the ultimate decision maker. They make a recommendation to the council based on the criteria in the subdivision code, city subdivision code, and state law regarding platting.
Attorney Rogers, I do have a question, because this indication, if you vote no, you need to indicate, is that immediate? This is the first I'm coming across in terms of, is that immediate or as requested or after the fact? What have you read through in regards to that?
If it's reviewed by another body, the other body has to discern the reasons for the council's action. And if it comes out in discussion how and in what fashion this proposed final plat did not comply with ordinances or state law, then the reviewing body can go with that. And quite honestly, I don't think I've heard that yet in the discussion on this plat now, item 38. So if at this point, council is inclined to disapprove of the final plat, then there needs to be a reason for that, that it doesn't comply with the ordinances or some other basis where it doesn't comply with the requirements of a final plat.
Mr. Blanford, do you have a question?
Attorney Rogers, so you just mentioned that on the final plat, we have very little discretion and adherence to state code. What about our discretion on the site plan? Do we have any discretion there in terms of whether it's sending it back to P&Z for further review or requesting any type of changes? Is that under the same latitude, or do we have more expansive authority there?
I think one approach could be, if council's inclined, if council has concerns about the master plan as a whole and believes it can be reviewed, it may be time at the site plan stage to refer it back. The master plan itself, out of concern that once one site plan is approved, then that's not taking the whole development into consideration. And so so I guess to answer your question directly, I think council would have a little more discretion when it comes to site plan review. Having said that, staff has recommended approval of the site plan as well, and of course I support staff's recommendation on that. But council, you're the decider, so.
Just to clarify, to the mayor's question, if I was to vote no on this, do I need to explain that right now, or do we wait till down the road if another body found it not legitimate, or if it, do you follow me?
I think so. What I try to explain is I haven't heard in what way this final plat comes up short. That would, so far in the discussion.
I haven't said it.
Okay.
What about the fact
If I'm
that-
to do that, though, do I need to explain that right now, sitting here this evening?
I wish you would.
Okay.
If the council votes it down.
Sure.
Anything further from council? Mr. Cruz?
Can Mr. Rogers or someone explain that if we approve the final plat, deny the site plan and direct it back to P&Z, does approval of the final plat eliminate any options that the developer then could have going forward?
Well, approval of the final plat, you are just establishing a legal lot. Would be just to try to break it down in maybe a more simple term. If you go to a residential development and you try to break it down into establishing a final plat establishes a lot that you can build a house on. In this particular case, you're establishing a lot, period. But then with the site plan approval, you can now, in this particular case, build those 2 townhomes on.
So then, basically, from what I can see, we're establishing grading and a retention pond. And the 2 lots. The track for the retention pond and the one that was outlined in red, Lot 1, I believe it's called. No townhomes, no depiction, even though they're depicted here, that's...
Not with item 38. It is just the lot.
Mr. Burr?
Approval of item 38 still allows them to do the grading work, which, as I still say, there's a lot of elevation. If you go to the end of Richard Road and you look at these properties, there's a lot of elevation difference between this, where the red box is, and where the homes are. So is that not enough to be able to say no to number 38, is the fact that the elevation does damage to the character of the neighborhood?
Actually, approval of the preliminary plat allowed them to move forward with grading and infrastructure. So the preliminary plat allows them to move forward with establishing the grading and any public infrastructure that they'll put in.
But any of us that voted no on the preliminary plat, don't we have legal right to vote no now?
You certainly do, but again, I'm not hearing a reason in what way this final plat doesn't comply with the Code of Ordinances.
Any further questions? Mr. Cruz?
Mr. Rogers, then the assertion that the residents didn't receive any letters, would that rise to the level of a reason that we could deny this? Because we have our own mind whether we can agree with them or agree with staff that they were sent. So that could be.
A notice is required when a rezoning occurs. The MU zoning was in place for this area. It was a change to the master plan. So a courtesy mailing is what happened, which is the same thing that we do for site plans and final plats. Any cases, we're trying to let the neighborhoods know.
In other words, it's not a legal requirement in the Code of Ordinances.
Okay, then how can you answer to the fact that it's still listed as an R1?
We've advised the county of the incorrect error on the map that they publish, but that's not the official zoning map.
Any further discussion from council?
Yes.
Mr. Whelan?
Quick question on character of the neighborhood. Has that ever been used successfully in a court system? I know people are starting to talk about that in everything we do.
I'm not aware of any when it comes to a plat.
Okay.
Any further discussion from council? Item 38 requires a roll call vote, please.
Five voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That does pass. Item 39, it reads a resolution approving a mixed-use residential zoning district site plan for a multi-unit residential development on Lot 1, Green Hill Village, Townhomes 2, Phase 1. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Open it for questions or discussion from council.
Now, is this the appropriate time, as you were indicating before, to make a referral to planning and zoning for the master plan revision?
We have a few slides prepared on the site plan that's proposed just for this particular lot that was just final platted, but certainly that is something that the council could do, is refer back the remainder of the area that's reserved for future development for further consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I would advise that you have some things that you might want them to look at. If you have some advice for them as far as conditions that you would like them to consider, this would be the time to do that.
Well, there were certain items that I referred to Ron, and we've actually discussed it with the developer. Would those need to be outlined, or is it enough that we already have them as a record?
I think it would probably be helpful to outline some of those items here, so it's on the record and all of the council knows what those are moving forward.
And does council, there was another piece for number 39, correct, Iris? I should have preempted that as far as another 10,000-foot view for that. Would you mind presenting that real quickly?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So as noted with the final plat, the proposed site plan is really just looking to build on that one buildable lot. Here's a view of the site plan that's being proposed, as well as the landscaping plan. So again, showing those 2 townhomes proposed, as well as the detention basin. So when reviewing a site plan, staff needs to look at the submittal using the corresponding code section as per the requirements, as well as the corresponding master plan. So in this case, the MU mixed use zoning district. On this slide, I've outlined the categories that the site plan review for this proposed project would have needed to followed. Outlined are just kind of general synopsis of it, and then the staff report goes in more detail. But overall, what was proposed meets all of those site plan review elements, so those criteria were met. In addition to the site plan elements for review, the MU district does require a design criteria, and those elements are also outlined here on this slide. So again, the staff report goes into detail on all of those, proportion, roof shape, pattern, materials and texture, color, and architectural details. And the staff, it lays out those reasons, but all of those were also found to be in compliance with the code section. And then I know there was a lot of discussion, and there is a lot of concern from the neighbors from the views of those townhomes from the south. So the applicant did submit some visuals of what that would look like, one without trees, one with trees. So that was their their visual of that. And then just to note again that these two buildings are not really the ones being considered today. Those are on the south corner of the development on a lot that is not developable. But it does give a sense of what the rear of those buildings look like. And again, the two that we are considering tonight are the one on the north end.
Thank you, Iris. Open up for council. Questions, comments? Open up for the public. Comments or questions on item 39? Oh, it's fine.
Tim Hansen, 1517 Athens Court. I'm afraid if we vote these first through, if you guys vote these first two through, is the same is going to happen again if it's 6 months or a year down the road. We may not get the letter in the mail that they said they sent out. And if this gets passed through again, that big building, might as well build a wall in my backyard in a parking lot is what I'll be looking at. And so that's why we need a little bit further discussion as far as it goes further. And I'm just afraid we're not going to get any mailings on this to let us know what's going on for future development is one concern, as all of us as neighbors have.
Thank you. This gentleman, oh, sorry, you sat down.
Hi there, good evening. Steve Trosky. I'm a planner with CGA Engineers, and we represent the developer on the project. It's been a long meeting so far. It's been a long project in general, so thank everybody for their time in dealing with this. I just want to go over some non-technical things. So why the site? This is some of the only ground available in Cedar Falls where townhouses like this can be built. There's a lack of these type of properties in this range across the city. There's almost no development of this with on-street parking and the parking in the rear around Cedar Falls, and the owner thinks that it's a product that can be successful in the market. So the owner has followed all of the city processes that have been outlined in the code, met every point of technical review provided by planning and engineering, and has completed detailed design plans for the street and infrastructure based on the approval from April of 2018, 16 months ago. So that's a lot of time and capital. We hear similar concerns from neighbors almost everywhere we go, everywhere we do a project. Neighbors certainly aren't wrong for wanting projects to positively impact their property. That's not shameful. What's mistaken is assuming that a townhouse that has been successful in similar neighborhoods otherwhere is somehow the wrong fit here. Residents obviously love the
Please
neighborhood.
direct your comments to the chair, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. Residents obviously love this neighborhood, and that's exactly why the owner wants to build here, to share the amenities of the wonderful neighborhood. They know others will love it too. The only difference here is the neighbors will share a wall. That's it. We cannot judge the merits of this project on the successes or failure of other similar projects in the neighborhood. Our project is not their project with the level of design, layout, and appeal that we're planning. This is not a row of driveways onto a street. This is rear accessed with a beautiful front, row house type appeal in the front. This is thoughtful, beautiful design. Now, you've heard neighbors speak against the project tonight, and you've heard a little technical review from city staff, and some of you have seen me up here before at various meetings, but we haven't heard from the families that'll move into these townhouses or the parents that'll watch their kids grow up in this fantastic neighborhood. By approving the site plan tonight, you'll give voice to them and allow for more housing options in the community. So we'd ask for your approval tonight. Thank you. Here
Thank
for any
you.
questions.
Appreciate it. Anything further? Public comment?
Mary Ann Nolan, 1510 Athens Court, Cedar Falls, Iowa. When I look at the townhomes, they're great, but would you want to have that out your front door or your back door? I would love to refer to my analogy again of the race. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher, and if I was going to start a race with all 28 of my kindergartners, which is what you have nowadays, I'd line them all up, and the little characters that started first before we said go, I would stop the race and I would say, let's back up, let's be fair. There's a story out now that fair is a place that you go to buy cotton candy. But I'm afraid we're all adults and we know what fair is. I have nothing against Panther Builders, and I think their architects probably done a wonderful job. But they started the race early. And I think it's very unfair that you would let someone that started the race early win. I would like you to consider all the things we have shared with you, all the time that we have spent writing our letters, sending emails. Most of us are, busy trying to knock out the rent, as they say, and get everything paid. It takes a lot of time to wage this battle. It's also very expensive on our side, too. But just think about some of those things and see how you would feel if you lived next to that. And think about a fair race.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone further on item 39?
My name is Michelle Hansen, 1517 Athens Court. However beautiful these may be in the front, my house is going to be looking at their garage. My house is going to see their garbage dumpster in the back. My house is going to be the ranch house where we made our family home, sitting in my backyard with a 3-story townhouse of college students, which we know it will be, looking in my backyard. You can't plant a tree like the city planners tried to say, oh, we'll plant some beautiful trees. Are you planting truffula trees? Because there's no tree that's going to grow that quick that is going to put any type of privacy in my backyard from what is going to be staring right at us. Our house is built so that our windows are all in our backyard right now. That's not a big area. So what do? Close down all my shades? I don't think so. This is not what fits in our backyard. This is not the character of our backyard or our neighborhood. These townhomes may work well in Omaha. They may work well in Chicago. They don't do well in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a block away from you and I. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further for item 39?
Ryan Frost from 4718 Addison Drive. Our biggest concern is, again, the precedent that this is establishing. So far, the communication has been laxed, and how are we reassured that we will know that things will be differently moving forward from here? Also, just asking that the proposed designs be re-examined, again, as it's been stated before, to better adhere to the character of the neighborhood. Again, we just want to be reassured that, so far it hasn't been proven that it's been accurately communicated to the community, to the neighbors, to the people, the homeowners. And how are we going to prove, and how will everything be set up that it will correctly communicate with things as they move forward is kind of our concern as well.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Robin Frost, 4718 Addison Drive. I'd just like to go on record as opposing the proposed townhome designs. The residents in this neighborhood have stated again and again that we're willing to work together with the developer on a solution that we can all live with, but it's my understanding that we've not had that opportunity quite yet to meet with that individual or individuals. I encourage the members of the City Council to recognize that although you're considering the first 2 buildings tonight, your decision will set a precedent for future development in the neighborhood. It's kind of like saying, well, we're going to build the left half of the football field. We're not quite sure yet what the right half is going to look like. I don't think so. We all know what that right half is going to look like, right? So they've got a concept plan out there. It's well documented what the rest is going to look like. So tonight's decision is important for that reason. What has been frustrating to me during this process has been the inevitability of this proposed plan. Each step of the way, the residents of our neighborhood have appeared before P&Z and the City Council, only to be told that your hands are tied. To this I ask, well, what's the point of the process? I understand that democracy is supposed to be a sort of a 2-way street, and this really seems like a 1-way street. I would encourage you, as has been discussed tonight, to return the master plan to P&Z, regardless of the outcome of this evening, for further review and consideration. Also, I just wanted to put on the record that there was a mailing sent out in relation to the decision tonight. It was sent out on July 2nd. It was about this final plat and the site plan. I would like to note that we received part of that mailing. I received the maps in mine, I did not receive the cover letter, so I had no idea what was going on with that. So that omission does not really inspire confidence for the notification process going forward for the future development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone further? Sir, you've already spoken as far as this evening on the comments, just one time only? Yep.
Sure, I'm just going to say that the notion of...
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, you have one opportunity to speak for 5 minutes in terms of this. If you have questions asked by council and that's approved, you can come back up.
Okay.
Otherwise, the free-for-all doesn't happen. Okay. Thank you. You're good. New item.
Let me tell you how it should have happened. We met with a developer of an assisted living that wants to come into our subdivision. And 3-story, they're going to have a Alzheimer's wing. They came, the developer that owned the land approached me. We put a meeting together. He came with some drawings. He listened to our concerns. He made adaptions to his plan, said, yeah, we can accommodate that, we can accommodate that. And I think he's going to get 100% approval out of our neighborhood for that project. And we asked him if he'd talk to the city, and he said, no, we never go through the city. We always start with the neighborhood first because we want to be welcomed in that neighborhood. The exact opposite happened here. We got hoodwinked with this non-mailing. Once that meeting started and it was approved, sorry, Charlie, you guys are done. So your decisions have been made based on false pretense from the beginning. When you take a developer like this that can come in and stroke the neighborhood and make the recommended changes, he's opened with welcome arms. That's the type of developer we want. We don't want a developer that bears his profits on the backs of homeowners that are going to lose money on their houses. I sold houses for 23 years, and I'm going to tell you right now, those houses that backed up to those properties or across the street from those properties are going to stand a substantial decrease in their values. That needs to be taken into consideration. But it could have been done right, and it should have been done right. It wasn't. Your hands are tied. What's the fair thing to do now? You guys decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further on item 39? Open it back up for council questions or comments. Mr. Burr?
I know you keep telling me no, Karen, but when is the appropriate time to refer this to P&Z to have the master plan revisited? While the twin homes might look good from a rear access, they're certainly not going to look good from the back of these backyards, which actually abut it. There's no, what would be between them is going to be the alley on the twin homes, and that is not an acceptable backyard for the single-family homes.
I would defer to Kevin on this, but I would believe that the council could make a motion to refer the master plan back to the commission. You could do that.
Do you need that done now or
Correct.
before or after the vote for item 39?
You have to take up the matter of the site plan during this meeting, of course, unless you put on the table. But a referral could come at the time that on the agenda referrals are called for. That would be an appropriate time to do that. Because they really are two separate matters. And so council has to decide what it's going to do with the site plan, A, and then a separate issue is, are we going to refer this matter back to P&Z, the matter of the master plan, for review and possible change?
So you're saying I have to do that after bills and payroll?
Wherever it is on the agenda, I would prefer we took up referrals when they're supposed to be taken up.
I just need some clarification there. It seems like, and maybe this is a different circumstance, but council cannot move to amend to move this site plan back to P&Z?
A motion to refer is appropriate anytime, but that's not on the agenda. You would be referring the site plan to somewhere else, not the master plan itself.
Okay.
What about if I had a motion to table the site plan number 39 and then made my referral, where you're saying after bills and payroll, for the master plan to be reviewed? Would that be appropriate?
Council's free to table whichever items it feels appropriate to table.
Anyone further from council?
I'd like to make a
Mayor,
motion to
if I may. I think I'm frustrated with several parts of this. To hear that we got another mailing not right is absolutely frustrating. That said, and this kind of hits on your point, Sue, is I think it's extremely disingenuous to these folks to come with a partial site plan at this point. I mean, considering how much controversy's been around this, and I want to see what the whole thing looks like. I feel like we approve part of it 6 months down the road, a year down the road, whenever the rest of it comes, there could be 7 new people sitting up here. And without the background, without the understanding of the controversy, without knowing about a mailing or with anything else like that. So as far as tabling it, I guess I don't know what it looks like if this gets rejected. Does the developer have an opportunity to come with another site plan? But if this gets tabled, for myself anyway, I want to see the whole thing. So if somebody can answer that, I would appreciate it, though.
Well, to answer the question about if a site plan is rejected,
Yeah.
they need to either substantially change it to bring it back for reconsideration or wait a period of about 6 months for reconsideration.
But to answer, I think, Mr. Miller's question is, if it's a table right now, it sits on the table. If during the referral process of this evening, council makes a referral to bring this back to P&Z, if I have that correct, then, pardon me? The master plan back to P&Z, then in essence, the master plan goes through that process. That which is still on the table sits.
The advantage to that, though, would be, is this correct, Stephanie, would be the advantage to that, though, then this could be brought back sooner than 6 months if the developer were to work out a good master plan that worked with the citizens.
That's correct.
So it's actually to the developer's benefit to table it versus
Rejecting it.
Well, it's council's prerogative, is in your court, folks. Is there any further question before we move on to item 39? You want to consider that as far as up and down roll call vote?
I'd make a motion to table.
Okay, there is a motion to table item 39. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded for tables by itself, not debatable.
Correct.
It's all by itself, sits on the table. It's been motion and second. All in favor, or is that a roll call?
It's a motion.
Yeah, just a motion.
It's a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Moves to table. I believe we're done there, Madam Clerk, as far as 39?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I just, I know we're done with the item, but in all fairness, I understand the frustration of not having the opportunity to participate, but I really am not going to sit here and have our staff who, if something happened, it was not intentional, but to have the appearance that our staff has done something to undermine the process. Mistakes happen, something happened, you weren't notified, and I've said multiple times, that's the most important part of this process, is your involvement. But when it came to us, it was a done deal, but it was not these people's fault. I mean, they're working as hard as they can. And you shake your heads, but they
Right,
are.
Mr.
I know your
Dara.
frustration.
Well, I'm sorry. There's nothing there as far as
Sorry,
the comments
Mayor.
and the comment there.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Dara. We are moving on to item 47 in the agenda. It's a long read. Council is basically considering the new TIF district for future annexation. It reads in part, item 47 is amending a number of ordinances, providing that general property tax is levied and collected each year on property taxes within the TIF district for the benefit of the state of Iowa, Cedar Falls, the county of Blackhawk County, various school districts to the taxing districts to be paid a special fund for payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to indebtedness, including bonds issued or to be issued incurred by the city in connection with the Unified Highway 58 Corridor Urban Renewal Area, or again, the TIF. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor, could we get a presentation from city on, just a brief on this item?
A presentation?
Or
An update? Do you have an update, Shane?
Yeah, I can explain it.
Okay, I must not have done a good enough job explaining it, reading through what I did. No, I appreciate it, Jane.
I do have a slide, too, that we're going to pull up on the computer screen. So if City Council remembers back in December of 2018, Council approved expanding our unified Highway 58 corridor urban renewal area. That's the area that's in light blue with the red lines, and you can see it's called out as Amendment Number 5 area. That encompasses some area outside the city limits that the city recently purchased to expand our industrial park. So with the approval of the expansion of the TIF area in 2018, along with that is adopting an ordinance. And the ordinance, when you adopt the ordinance, that actually establishes the TIF fund, which you then collect the money that goes into that fund, which also then starts your 20-year time frame per state code. So at the time that staff recommended the approval of Amendment Number 5, we didn't want to adopt the ordinance because we didn't want to start the 20-year time frame at the time. We are seeing now that we're starting to move plans forward with the development of that area, and so we feel the time's right now to get that ordinance established, which then establishes the base value of the area, which then also allows for the fund to start collecting money.
Awesome. Well done. Thank you. It's been motioned, second by council. Any further discussion, questions? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 48, is there a motion to allow bills and payroll as of August 5th?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion approves. It's been second. Any further discussions from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next item for city council referrals. Does council have any items up for referral this evening?
I would like to refer to Planning and Zoning, the master plan for Green Hill Village townhouses with specific emphasis that Lot A, that the developer work with the surrounding property owners to come up with a compromise that would preserve the character of the neighborhood.
Been referred to take, I believe, item 39. I know what we're talking about here. Is there a second? Been motion second. Any further discussion from council? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Any further referrals from council? Next is city council updates. If council doesn't mind, there's a few staff updates I'd like to convey. One is a communications specialist, and then Stephanie, and some speeding traffic concerns. And I'd be happy to open it up to council thereafter. Amanda, do you have an update for tomorrow evening?
Amanda Houston, Communications Specialist. Tomorrow is National Night Out, so we want to take the opportunity to invite the community. The Cedar Falls Public Safety Department is going to be teaming with Target in Cedar Falls. This is actually the 10th year that they've been doing this for families. It's going to be from 4 to 7 at the Target retail store, which is located at 214 Viking Plaza Drive in Cedar Falls. There's going to be a lot of family-friendly activities. There'll be professional face painters, balloon artists. Hy-Vee is also going to be having a free cookout with brats and hot dogs, so it's a great time to bring your family, and you'll also get the chance to see a lot of emergency vehicles, including Mercy One is going to have their air care helicopter, and then you'll have police and fire and ambulance vehicles as well. So kids can come, they can get a look at it, and then kids and parents alike, individuals, they can speak to emergency personnel to learn more about crime prevention and safety.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. And Stephanie, you have something for the city or to announce on behalf of the city?
Yes, last week it was announced that Cedar Falls is a recipient of the Iowa League of Cities All-Star Community Award for the University Avenue project. So we were very excited to hear that. The All-Star Community Award is a program that acknowledges and encourages excellence in local government. Recognition of superior and innovative efforts is what they're seeking to do. So we submitted a nomination for the University Avenue project and the transformation that we feel that ended up occurring with that project. The entries are divided into 3 population categories, so they select one community as a winner for each of those population categories, 3,000, 3,000 to 9,999, and then 10,000 and above. So we were in the large community category as the recipient for that. It is judged by independent judges that are knowledgeable in local government, and then one winner's chosen from each of those categories. So on September 26th, we look forward to accepting this award at the Iowa League of Cities annual conference.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And finally, Director Olson, we have an update with last meeting was speeding and traffic concerns on West 2nd Street.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So 2nd Street, as you know, is a detour due to the construction on 1st Street. So there's been a significant increase of traffic and some complaints from residents of speeders. So we've had officers do some patrolling on there. We've had some citations issued for speeding and for stop sign violations, as well as many warnings. And then we also had a speed study that we did just to kind of evaluate without the presence of a radar trailer or police officers, what type of problem we had in what areas. And I think Chase might be more appropriate for him to cover that speed study. His department handled that.
Sure. Some of the data we collected were traffic volumes and some of the speeds, both eastbound and westbound along 2nd Street there. What we found was that there is about a 2 to 3 block stretch of westbound traffic that we have some increased speeds in the area. And on a daily measure, the engineering department works with public safety on implementing certain traffic control devices to help reduce the speed and increase enforcement in the area if we see necessary.
Very good. Thanks to you both. Now open it for council updates. Any council updates this evening?
If I may, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Miller?
I was hoping Chief Olson could give us some background on, there was a commercial fire alarm, I believe, 2 weekends ago. I've seen a couple opposing opinions as to what is supposed to happen at a commercial fire alarm. So I was hoping you could offer some background on it.
Yeah, certainly. So we have fire alarms occurring hundreds of times a year. And we have a response that we've been doing for a number of years. And it'll take me a minute to explain all of this because it's just not as easy as it sounds. So we tell dispatch, we being Cedar Falls tells dispatch, who do we want to send to each particular type of call? Do you want one fire truck? Do you want 2 fire trucks? Do you want 1 police car? Do you want 2 police cars? Do you want an ambulance? What do you want sent? So for commercial fire alarms, what we have been doing for quite a number of years is that we send 1 fire truck is dispatched to that scene. The reason for that is 99.9% of those alarms are false. When they're not false, we typically, and what we do on the way to the scene too, is we ask dispatch, call the residents, call the business, it's typically business, find out if there's, find out what they can. And typically they get the response, we don't know why it's going off. But if they do say it's a fire, smoke, or whatever, then the rest of the team goes. Now what we voluntarily do is dispatch sends 1 truck, they go lights and siren. Then what we do is we self-dispatch another truck that goes with traffic. They don't go lights and siren. We also have our PSOs where they're not dispatched to alarms of this nature. Now they do self-dispatch frequently. So that is how we are dispatched to those alarms. Now what we do, what we did is we checked with other cities and find out that we're pretty much the norm is what happens because of the volume of alarm calls you get of this type. But we're going to take a look at this. We have meetings with our police supervisors and our fire supervisors this week, so we're going to take another look and see if we want to do something any different than this. We've had 6 fire alarms in the last week. We do have several hundred a year, and on some of those, for example, the one in particular that you're talking about, it turned out to be a gentleman put a cardboard box on a stove, hit the button to turn the stove on, and then he left the building. It ignited the cardboard box, set off a alarm. The dispatch originally was that there was an alarm, fire alarm. En route, they got another alarm, a water flow alarm. That means there's water flowing out of the sprinkler system. That would automatically tell you there's a higher probability here now. Then we got a phone call, and I don't know if that person called in or dispatch. No, it had to be that person that called in on this example and said he smelled smoke. So you immediately have a heightened awareness, and you send your other truck, engages the lights and siren at that point. And we had 8 PSOs working at the time, but none were dispatched, and fire didn't request them. The sprinkler system did put the fire out completely, so there was no additional fire suppression needed. But just to kind of explain a little bit how these works, later in that day, we had another alarm. We had 2 PSOs self-dispatch arrive at the scene first, determined it was false. No fire trucks came at all because it wasn't necessary for them to come. So we have alarms, and we also have police alarms that come in almost daily that are false. So we make certain judgments, who to send, how to send. We have one battalion chief that's worked, and I asked him last week, he's worked 28 years here, and that got us, as we have incidents occur where we think we need to reevaluate scenarios, we do that. But I asked him, how many real fire alarms have you seen? He said, my entire career of 20 years, I've only seen 2, and this was the second one. So it doesn't mean we don't take them seriously, because we truly do, and we'll take a look at them. But these are the type of decisions that we need to make, is are we going to send 2 fire trucks and all the PSOs, and we always send an ambulance to a real fire call, to every alarm if 99.9% of them are false. So those are tough decisions you have to make. What is the risk versus reward? Because we don't want to risk accidents with fire trucks, accidents with squad cars, accidents with ambulances. But of course, we absolutely want to get there. And so I think one of the best things that we do is we make that phone call, and we say, hey, what's going on here? And we typically, because most of them are the commercial alarms, we get that response. Hey, I smell smoke. No, there's nothing here. We don't know why it went off, that type of thing.
So then, just so I understand correctly, you had mentioned PSOs self-respond. That isn't always going to happen. In a case like this, where 99% of them are false, you've got a fire truck en route, if not 2. PSOs technically, unless dispatched there, don't have to respond, or how's that call made?
Well, the matrix that we've had for a number of years, 10, 20 years, says one fire truck. Now, it's very likely that we'll probably change that to dispatch. At least, we'll have to figure out how many PSOs, because if you send one, they're going to get dispatched. You're probably going to get them all. And so we're just going to have to take a look. Again, I'm not going to make that decision on my own. I'm going to consult with our supervisors and see what they think are the best decision for us to make in this scenario. Do we make a change for this one particular scenario, or if we do, what type of change? So that's kind of what we're thinking about.
Mr. Burr?
Did I understand you, Jeff, to just say then that when the fire got there, they did not request any PSO?
No, they never did in that entire call. And maybe the appropriate time for them to do that would have been as soon as they got the alarm that there's water flow. That would have automatically, and one of them did say that was responding, that automatically heightened our awareness that we may actually have something on this one. So it might have been most appropriate for them to say, hey, send the PSOs, in case they would have had a scenario where they needed more response.
Why would that not happen?
The supervisor just chose not to do that. The fire supervisor.
Anything
Mayor?
further updates? Mr. Green?
Yes, sir. Just have a quick follow-up question for this idea of self-dispatching. Ask if you just explain real briefly what criteria the PSO are expected to use in determining whether to self-dispatch. Is that matrix you referred to before?
No, they don't. The matrix is what dispatch has. So the dispatch center, the whole center is computerized. And what we have to do is we have to tell, there's probably 150 call types. I'll use an automobile accident, for example. You could have just property damage. You could have injuries. You could have motorcycle. You could have bicycle, pedestrian, rollover. What we do is they give us a list of all these call types, burglary, robbery, fire. And we have to sit down and we have to tell for each scenario who we want to. For example, a property damage, automobile accident, a parking lot, we'll send one police car. But if it's in a major intersection and there's injuries, you're going to get a fire truck, you're going to get at least 2 police, the dispatch is going to tell you 2 police cars and 1 ambulance. So that's how that matrix works. And then it also tells you, we have to it also has grids. There's like 40 grids in town. So it'll tell you which particular fire truck out of which fire station, which particular police car out of which ward of town they're working in, which ambulance, the north or the south end ambulance as well. So it's broken down that way. So anybody, and it happens daily, will self-dispatch when they hear it, or every squad car, and throughout the public safety building, there's status monitors. That tells you who's working. That tells you whether they're on calls, whether the call will pop up on the screen even immediately, even before the dispatcher has a moment to key it up. And so people will see that and frequently send themselves, even sometimes before the dispatcher even gets the call out. So we think, from a public safety standpoint, that's critical. That we're always aware of what our call types are and how many people we need. I will tell you, I would rather over-respond than under-respond. And I believe that's probably the philosophy our public safety department has, is that if they see a call and they're dispatching whatever it would be, let's say 2 police officers, they may say, hey, look, there's a possibility this person's going to run, other cars may go, just to be in the area to help and do that kind of thing. So, if that helps.
Anything further from council? I've got a question real quick. Attorney Rogers, 3 weeks ago, there was an email received that from an attorney in Des Moines and for our public safety our fire department employee group. Media covered it in terms of how they want to have an indictment on our process, the council's process and civil service process, I believe, in the supervision promotion. It's been 3 weeks there. Have we received any sort of lawsuit for that injunction at all?
I think you said indictment. I think you meant injunction.
I did. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And the lawsuit is filed, to my understanding, but as far as I know, the city has not been served with the lawsuit. They just got a courtesy copy, which isn't effective service. In other words, the time frame for the city to respond has not started yet.
Okay. Is that normal?
What are we, 3 weeks or 4 weeks out? That's I'd call that unusual.
Okay. Very good. I also have a question for you, Director Olson. I know I've spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time in the public safety building, and I know for myself and for, I'm assuming, most of council, that if within our staff groups, if there is reports of bullying, intimidation, or harassment from one employee group to another, is there a process there? Is there something that staff does for that in terms of your leadership and the hierarchy involved in management if something like that comes forward?
Well, we are certainly absolutely obligated to investigate any type of inappropriate behavior within the department. So, any reports of that type would certainly be investigated and appropriate action taken.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from council in terms of update?
If I may, Mayor.
Please.
Somewhat along the same lines as you were talking to Attorney Rogers about appeals, complaints that have been made. I believe there was one unfounded against you here recently.
Yes, there was.
To the tune of $20,000 or a price tag to it?
Yes, and I want to make sure I'm careful there, Attorney Rogers. There was a complaint filed by the firefighter union group, and you need to help and take over from there because it's a personnel matter.
There was a complaint made. It wasn't by a particular group. It was by individuals, and that investigation concluded with recommendation no further action be taken. That's as far as I'm comfortable talking about that because it's a confidential matter.
Confidential personnel matter, but to Councilman Miller's question, that did cost the city $19,000.
So we've had several of these over the past couple years. Into any idea how many we're talking about? None of them have been founded, brought by whether they're appeals or towards OSHA, or I believe there was one towards the CAF system or something along those lines. None of which have been founded. Is that accurate?
Yes, in fact, Director Olson had sent to me a report because I was asking the same thing a while back. He also recently requested or sent a report out. I believe there's 25 instances of complaints, appeals, grievances, and requests for information. And those instances came back not founded. Correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Rogers?
None founded today.
None
that I'm
founded
aware of.
today, and that cost the taxpayers $25,000.
Thank you.
Anything further from council?
I'll throw out a comment if I may.
Sure.
I'm getting more and more concerned about problems that Thank you. I'm getting more concerned about problems we allude to within the police fire department. Are we getting good training and are we getting the support we need between all members of the public safety organization? In other words, are our PSOs getting trained properly? When they go to a fire, have there been cases where they've arrived and the fire truck took a wrong route, and how is that possible?
Director?
Okay, so the training process is quite lengthy. When somebody is trained to be a firefighter, we go through the Firefighter 1 training, which consists of 5 weeks of classroom and some skills training, which includes 44-page skill manual that they go through but before they move on to take their Firefighter 1 and hazmat tests and are certified with the state. Once they've achieved that, they're able to operate here as a firefighter. Now, we continue to do training beyond that. There is some significant monthly training that occurs. One is, for example, master streams this year, and I know some of the council have been out there and actually seen some of the work that they've done. We also have a online process that we use that we assign online assignments for them to do. So they do these online assignments, and then sometimes there's tests, sometimes there's not afterwards. We also have currently it's a list of 20 items that they need to complete each month as part of a repeated training process. So they're continually going through, the training processes that they need to go through. And then we have our live house fires that we have. It can be 1-2 times a year based upon the number of homes that we get donated to us, that we can burn. And then we, of course, go to the Northeast Iowa Regional Fire Training Center too, as well for our fire training. So there is a significant amount. We've been doing this, I would say some of them are on their 4th year now. They're very skilled. They know very well what they should be doing on the fire scene. But the PSOs that drive the squad cars, we don't teach them to drive a pumper, and we don't teach them to operate a pumper because the guys assigned to the fire shifts do that. So there are a few things that are not taught because they won't be using that skill and they don't need to know that skill. So there's quite a bit of training going on. And you're seeing some people, again, develop some pretty high skills due to the number of years they've been doing it. As you can imagine, someone in their 1st year is not as good as the guy in their 3rd year is the 6th year, and that type of thing under normal circumstances. So that's where we're at.
Anything further from council? Mr. Cruz?
I was just going to add to what Director Olson said. I had the opportunity to go out and take part in the aerial truck or ladder truck, what's the proper term, but it's a pretty impressive piece of machinery, and everybody was training on all components of that, and all 4 vehicles, all 4 fire trucks were being discussed and shown and explained to all the personnel. So the question of whether they're trained properly should not be a concern, because there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of experience in training being shown to the PSOs.
Thank you. Any further updates from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr.
Just
Green?
real quick. In addition to the main event for National Night Out, Green Hill and South Main Neighborhood Association is also working with the Public Safety Department in Fairway for a neighborhood level event. So I just wanted to thank them for their initiative to do that. And if you're in that neighborhood, do you know that it's from 6 to 8 p.m.? Thanks.
Thank you. Any further from council? Next item is public forum. Speakers will have up to one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak tonight? Hi, Butch.
Butch Brown, 421 Spruce Hills Drive. All of you councilmen and mayor have most likely received an email from me about our stupid ambulance service. Mercy One, they have an ambulance at some place out in the industrial park and one at Satori. I wrote the same thing I sent to the Courier, to the editorial page. They responded something like, we have a third ambulance. I don't know where it's at, and I really don't care. But when it takes 30 minutes to get an ambulance to my house, just a block off of Green Hill Road, that's too darn long. I called the ambulance for my wife, and I don't know whether they came lights and siren. I didn't hear any sirens. But anyway, I think this council and ought to consider returning our ambulance service to the fire department. We have had ambulance calls before, and we had one during a snowstorm, and the fire department got there first. No, I'm sorry. The police department got there first, then the fire department, and then the ambulance. And which was really a miracle because the snow was pretty deep. This was been a number of years ago. And anyway, I don't understand why it took 30 minutes to get here. So I rode the ambulance to Allen Hospital. And en route, I asked, what took you so long? The driver responded, we got tied up in traffic on 58 and Viking. Why in the world would you want to go to Green Hill Road going through Viking and 58? Why didn't they just go west on Viking Road to Hudson Road and then go north on Hudson to Green Hill Road? And they'd have been there. It probably took 6 to 10 minutes. If they don't know how to negotiate around that traffic, then they should not be driving an ambulance. Another thing I'd like to talk to you about is, I brought it up once before, is a street light, the need for one at Green Hill and 27th Street. You come up to that intersection from the west, you're right on the intersection before you see it, because there is no street light at the intersection. There's one east of the intersection, but it does not light that intersection. I don't really have a problem at the roundabout there on Green Hill, but there's no light there either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Does council have any comments or questions? Previous speaker? Mr. Blanford, sorry.
I guess, Director Olson, do you have an incident report regarding the ambulance call? And then Director Sheets, can you address the streetlight concern, please?
Yeah, actually, Butch reached out to us some weeks ago about that. And I can reach out to him again and review that, but I think he's off on his time a little bit, so quite a bit. So we'll take a look at that again.
If I may,
yes,
on that same topic,
yeah.
How does that contract work? with the ambulance service and not being, I mean, Mercy One having control of that? Is that accurate?
The city entered into agreement with what covenant or whatever it was way back. It was a number of years ago. I believe it was in the 80s. And they have a contract with the city to provide ambulance service. And I haven't looked at the contract in a long time, so I really can't remember the details of it, but we do have a contract with them. And they do provide 2 ambulances 24 hours a day. I believe they have a 12-hour ambulance during the daytime hours as well. So that'd be a 3rd ambulance. Whenever if their 2 ambulances are busy or 3, depends on the time of the day, when they're all busy, they also have rigs over in Waterloo. So when that 2nd ambulance or that 3rd ambulance gets dispatched, then one of them from Waterloo comes to Cedar Falls. So they have one always available for calls, is how it is operated. But I will tell you that intersection it's much better now than it was months and months ago. But I could see where that would slow you down some. But
Mercy One provides the service and staffs.
yeah, they provide it's a paramedic level service.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No, but sorry. No, reach out after for sure if you'd like. Shane?
I can probably address the concern about the street light. This is the first, I guess I've heard of this intersection lighting concern. I can have the engineering department take a look at it, see if there's adequate lighting, conflict lighting for the intersection, and we can work with CFU to get a street light installed if necessary.
Thank you. Anything further? Anyone else for public comment this evening?
Simon Harding, 2238 Sunnyside Circle. I just have a question. What's the highest number of firefighters that Cedar Falls has employed in the last 25 years?
Thank you. Your question will be considered when you're done speaking, if you're done.
I can't.
Your question will be considered once you're done speaking. If you're done, I'll open it up for council to ask. Thank you very much, unless you have more further.
No, that's good.
Thank you. Open it up for council or Director Olson, if you'd like to answer that question.
Well, the best I can recall is somewhere in the 30s. And that was quite a few numbers of years ago. Most recently, we've had about 30. And back when we were in the 30s, we were also the dispatch center for our fire department. We actually had our own police dispatch, our own fire dispatch before we went to consolidated dispatch. So we would always have to have one as a dispatcher. So the number of firefighters on shifts available for calls would have been in the low 30s. And so let me just add a little more to that. So what you typically had over the last, I'll say, 15 years, you've had minimum staffing levels of 6 or 7 firefighters at a time. What we're experiencing now, for example, the most recent garage fire we had in town, we had 14 firefighters respond, combination of fire and public safety officers respond. Those are the numbers we typically have. Now, if you remember we recently had an ISO rating come back, and they averaged the number of firefighters that we had working around the clock on an average, 24/7, 365, and it was I think it was 15.1 firefighters working around the clock. Now, what they said is we count the public safety officers as half because they have a dual role, so they cut that number back to 10.6. So those are much higher numbers than we've had responding to calls in the past, and we can show that in vast majority of our fire calls here in the last few years have had higher numbers, and they continue to get higher. Now we're at a point now where they're probably going to plateau to that that 10 to 20 number per call instead of that 6 or 7 minimum that they've had for a number of years.
Anything else from council? I would like to ask, to answer the previous speaker's direct question, how many firefighters does Cedar Falls have now? Are we up at 70 now, or 75? I know it, because we've had so many good candidates come through the pipeline, different phases.
We're in the 60s. You're accurate. Where we're at. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay,
Without
thank you.
looking at my list, but it's close to 70.
Thank you. Anyone further for public comment this evening?
Good evening. Larry Wyckoff, 4241 East Park Road, the great city of Cedar Falls. On the 23rd of July, there was a terrible incident that happened in our tremendous city. A legal alien charged with kidnapping, attempting to sexually assault 16-year-old girl. This is from a Breitbart website. An illegal alien has been charged with kidnapping a 16-year-old girl and then attempting to sexually assault her in Cedar Falls, Iowa, police say. Thanks to the great efforts of Jeff and Craig Birdie, this man, a 43-year-old illegal alien from El Salvador, is accused of grabbing a 16-year-old babysitter by the wrist and forcing her into his home. The guy then allegedly forced the girl against a wall in a bedroom, attempted to pull down her shirt, and tried to put his hand someplace. The girl was able to fight the illegal alien off of her and escape from his house. The girl told police she ran back to the home where she was babysitting, locked the doors, and called the police. Officials said the girl suffered only minor injuries, such as scratches on her chest and arms. The individual is currently in prison on a $500,000 bail and has been charged with second-degree kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. My point here is, from what we've heard, the place that the perpetrator was renting is now considered basically an In-N-Out hotel, like an In-N-Out hamburger place. What kind of rules do we have here in Cedar Falls that allow this kind of activity to go on? But the positive thing is the person was caught thanks to Jeff and Craig Birdie's team, and I just can't say enough thanks about that. Also, I'm begging you, don't let Cedar Falls become a sanctuary city. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Anything further from council? Questions or comments? The previous speaker? Director Olson, do you have anything to that?
I would just like to comment on the rental situation there. So we were in contact with the owner and the property manager, and they are no longer renting that property to the group that was renting it and allowing people to roll in and out of there frequently. So that problem has been resolved at that property.
Oh, thank you. Anyone further for public comment this evening? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.